What's good, y'all? It's Solution back at it with another mental gym video in which I give you guys mental exercises you can use to become extremely successful and accomplish all the goals that you are after. So let's get right into it. So today I want to talk about something that I believe is very powerful in the context of being a mental exercise, and that is personalization. And personalization in the context of achieving your goals is taking action in ways that best suit you in order to achieve your goals. Key thing here is best suits you. Always in, oh, do I wait? Hold on. Take action in ways that best suit you. Yeah. So basically, you guys have to make sure that when you take in advice, when you take in information, it's not always going to suit you perfectly for your exact circumstances. And this is where your personal discretion, meaning your own decision making on how to take in advice or information and apply it directly to your life, is very important. Because just because I say you should do this does not mean it will work best for you. Right. And that's why for a lot of my mental exercises, I try to make them as simple as possible so you can apply them in whatever unique way that you want to, because doing things in the way that best suits you creates longevity. And a bare minimum requirement for pretty much all success, all extreme success, and achieving all goals is consistency. So I want you guys to build strategies or use exercises in ways that you can do it for a very long time, because that's where you're going to see the best results. And that's what made me even really start thinking about it and realizing in my own life, like, yeah, for a lot of times that I've taken in information, if someone has just given me advice on something and I've just taken it straight at face value, sure, parts of it have probably been valuable. But the thing is, I haven't been able to maintain what they've said to do, right? Because it's best suited for them, not for me. For example, I remember back in the day when I used to be playing soccer in high school. I was like, man, I need to grind hard. I need to train way harder, right? So I used to always look at what Kobe was doing, even though obviously Kobe played basketball. But he'd be like, yeah, I wake up at 4 a.m. and then I come back, I rest for about 2 hours, go train again. And while that was really lit, and I even started trying that, I wake up at 4, go train soccer, come back, chill for like 2 hours, eat, do whatever, and then go out, train again, and then chill for 2 hours or whatever, and then go to school, come back, train again. While all of that was great, the thing is, I was taking the advice at face value, meaning that lifestyle and the way things worked best for Kobe in training that way. Like literally 4 hours on, or not 4 hours on, 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 2 hours. But like the way my life was set up and the shit that I had to do, extracurriculars, or stuff like that, like it was getting in the way of me being able to maintain this Kobe advice, right? So what I had learned there was like, oh, I need to make sure when I take it advice, like I personalize it to me, that for me, so it best suits me in my personal circumstances. Because the problem is, if I just copy exactly what somebody else is doing, I'm copying what suits somebody else best, not me. So I'm not going to be able to maintain the longevity of what they are doing, right? Because they have created for them to maintain the longevity of their action, but it has not been created for me personally. So I'm not going to be able to use it in the long term. And this is like such a little mistake you could be making, but it will make it so much easier when you take an advice. And if you're wondering, wait, who should I even take advice from? I've made this value circle video, which you can check out, and I'll link right here, where you can understand who you should take advice from and why it is probably valuable to take advice from these certain people. But this is more of a personal filtering process, or this personalization mental exercise is more of a filtering process for you to be able to take in information and apply it to your life in ways that actually benefits you perfectly, right? Because for the people in your value circle, which is going to be the people you take advice from, you might not always have direct access to them. So they might not be able to tell you exactly what you should do in the context of your circumstances with your current skill set and everything else that involves you. Like they're not going to be able to tell you exactly what you should do that works best for you. So you need to be able to take in information, even though you might not have direct access to someone, and use it to the best of its ability and create your own process where you can personalize it for yourself. because like I said, that's how you create longevity and consistency in your actions, which will lead to you achieving your goals. So for the first part of this mental exercise, what you want to do is something I'll call cut the fat. Plus, because there's more, but cut the fat. So what do I mean by cut the fat? So essentially, what I kind of alluded to or mentioned earlier was like, for a lot of the mental exercises I make, I try to make them as simple to understand as possible, as simple and actionable as possible. And the reason why I do this is so you guys can personalize it. Because if I tell you the bare minimum of what must occur, the bare minimum of what actually matters in order to get outcome, in order to personalize, you must cut the fat. Like bare minimum. You can cut the fat or you can take action in whatever way suits you as long as you take the action. Right? But if I said you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to wake up at 6 a.m., you have to brush your teeth this way, you have to move your left pinky a little bit, then cut the fat. I've added in all this complexity in what I think you guys should do when really all those other things I just mentioned a second ago was literally just personal preference. It's personal preference that you should wake up at 5, you should move your pinky this way, you should move your eyelid left and right before you take it. Like, you know what I'm saying? All those things are just personal preferences. And I don't want to add in my personal preferences on what I think you guys should do because it might not best suit you in the long term. That's why I break things down all the way to the simplest and bare minimum form so you can use it in a way that best suits you. I just know the bare minimum requirement of what should be done. And I'll give you guys an example of this so you can understand it even more. So let's say you are a high school athlete and you want an athletic scholarship, right? So in order to do that, you have to send emails to coaches. You have to reach out to coaches asking for a scholarship, basically, summed up. You have to ask them for a scholarship, right? And the thing with this, let's set a scene here. So let's say you know 10 other people who are also trying to get an athletic scholarship and they are all writing emails. You could ask all 10 of them, hey, what did you write in your email to get a coach to respond? Or what did you guys write in your emails? And everyone will give you a different answer. And now you're sitting here like, well, what the fuck do I do? And that's a good question because it is a personalized decision what you write in the email. But what we do know is a bare minimum requirement is what? Writing an email. A bare minimum requirement is writing the email. So let's say I was making a mental exercise literally on that. The simplest thing I would say is literally write email because that's what must be done. The way in which you write the email is up to you, right? And the thing is, you can just build on bare minimum requirements, right? So you might be like, okay, I have to write the email and the email must have words. Like when you take all the 10 people you asked, you literally just look at all 10 people and you're like, what are the things that all of them did or doing? Because let's say all 10 people got scholarships from emails. Like, what did all 10 people all do? You know that they sent an email. You know that they wrote an email, right? They put words on the email, right? Or first they put words on an email, right? All of them included their playing experience for whatever sport they were playing. They included their playing experience. They all included a highlight tape, right? You see how you're just building on bare minimum requirements here because all 10 people did the same thing. But as you keep building on the bare minimum requirements, you're going to start to realize and see where things start heading off in different directions and people are just starting to do whatever they want. Like you might see one of the people, they only did one paragraph. You might see somebody else, they did two. Another person might have done three. Another person might have been four. Another person might have added all their family emails, all their coaches' emails. Like literally, you're going to start to see where people are personalizing their stuff. But essentially, when you take in advice, you always want to cut the fat. You want to cut the fat, meaning you want to go down to what matters. Because once the fat has been cut, once people's personal preferences has been removed, you want to be left with the bare minimum. Literally, you just want to know what the bare minimum stuff you have to do to achieve something is. Because this makes it easier to personalize. Like I was giving in the earlier example, if I giving you all these other random steps before I tell you to do the one thing that matters, it's going to be really confusing on taking that advice. But if I push everything down to its simplest form, to its bare minimum, and give it to you, you can use it in whatever way you want to. Because you know the thing that matters most, right? If you know what matters, right? If you know what matters and what doesn't matter, you can personalize in whatever way you want. But if you're not sure what, because if I give you all this information on what you should do, adding in my own personal preferences when I give you guys the information, essentially you're not going to be able to instantly know what matters. So what a lot of us just do is we take in all the information and do everything that we've been told, right? And it might not actually work for us. But an important disclaimer I also want to say before I continue with the mental exercise is that oftentimes, though, I'm not saying you can't replicate exactly what somebody else has done. Because sometimes you can do exactly what somebody else has done and it works perfectly for you. And in a sense, it is okay to replicate something before you decide to change it and make it work for you. Because sometimes if you just replicate it perfectly, you get the result you want and you're fine. And you don't have to go through the complication of already personalizing it, right? But you also have to realize when something doesn't work for you. That's why breaking it down to the bare minimum is always really important. And if you do this as soon as possible and you know exactly what actually matters, you can then personalize in whatever way that you want to, if that makes sense. I just wanted to give that disclaimer because I'm not saying you can't replicate advice that somebody has given you or you cannot replicate advice that you have seen. You just have to be careful to make sure you're not replicating it for so long and it's not working for you. That's why I'd always recommend following the mental exercise. You cut the fat, you take the personalization out of the advice and look at the bare minimum. And then once you have the bare minimum, right, you just do what's best for you. And that's it. So once you are given advice, to give you guys a whole understanding, because I want to make sure you guys really, really do understand this, because this can make a huge difference in how you operate and create a lot of consistency in your life for your personal circumstances, for whatever path of goal achievement you're on. So essentially, when you are given advice, right, and if the person you are getting advice from is not like you don't have direct access to them, meaning you cannot give them the context of your life and your circumstances and your skill set and your setting and environment, right? But you see they're still giving valuable advice that you can use. You want to make sure that in the advice that they give you, you are cutting the fat, meaning you are taking away the personalization of their advice. You're taking it away because you do not want to take in somebody's personal preferences and the advice that really matters too. Because you're not going to be able to create longevity in the action that you take from said advice. Because if you take in somebody's personal preferences from advice that you take in, it's best suited for them, not you. So you're not going to be able to maintain that. And you've probably already experienced doing something the way somebody else does it and realize that shit doesn't work for me. Some people might be like, yep, I wake up at 6 a.m. every day and that works best for me. But you might not work best like that. You might have tried waking up at 6 a.m. consistently and that just doesn't work for you. So you wake up at 10 instead. Because you realized, oh, what time you wake up, it's a personal preference. It's not a bare minimum requirement for whatever you have to achieve. That is just pretty much a very, very simple example of what I mean. You don't have to exactly copy somebody else. You have to cut the fat. So you realize, okay, what time you wake up doesn't matter. You've cut the fat there. But you might realize a bare minimum for something that involves whatever path of goal achievement you're on is, oh, I have to make sure I still do this action though. I have to make sure I end up here. It might not matter what time I wake up, but it matters where I have to go to do this particular thing. Because either way, if somebody wakes up at 6 or 10 or whatever, we both have to make sure we end up here. So you know that's the bare minimum. You have to end up here, right? And then you just do what's best for you. So, like I was saying earlier, and I kind of already talked about it earlier, is like, oh, okay. Or in this early example I was just using, you're like, oh, okay, so I'll just wake up at 10. They can wake up at 6, I'll wake up at 10. And waking up at 10 works best for me. Waking up at 6 works best for them. But we're still going to end up in this particular location to do whatever activity we need to do to achieve whatever goal we are after. So I really hope this makes sense. Essentially, just to say it again, because I really want to make sure you guys understand this. It's always been my goal, all my videos, to make sure this makes sense. Literally, you have to understand that you want to personalize things to make it work best for you. When you are given valuable information, cut it down to its bare minimum, meaning the non-negotiable requirements, things that must occur in order to achieve a goal. You just need to know the things that must happen, right? Because there's a billion ways to solve a problem, right? So you want to choose the way to solve it in a way that best suits you, but just know what matters in the end. Know what must occur. So you have to cut the fat out of any advice you were given. Because normally when people give advice, they say their personal preference on what should be done. They're giving their personal opinion on what works best for them, because they're not going to give you advice saying what works best for somebody else, because they're not somebody else. They're going to say what worked best for them. And sure, you could potentially do exactly what they've done and it could work for you. So if you want to do that, that's fine. And I do agree, most of the time you should start that way. Just do exactly what somebody else is doing, right? Because it might work instantly. But the minute you see it's not working for you, right? If you've replicated perfectly, you've done exactly what they've done, then you start doing things your own personal way. But generally speaking, if you can, cut the fat as soon as possible and just know what the bare minimum requirements are. Just know what the bare minimum is. Because if you know what matters and you know what must occur, it's easier for you to personalize information. As I was saying earlier in the earlier example, if I give you all these random steps before I say the thing that actually matters, right? You might be doing a ton of things that do not actually suit you. And then you finally do the thing that actually matters, the actual bare minimum thing. So I'd much rather you guys stop and ask yourself, okay, what are the personal requirements here? I mean, what are the personal preferences here? And what are the actual non-negotiable requirements? And I was saying how you do this is basically you break down to what actions must occur. As I was saying in the email example, you know, out of the 10 people you asked for advice, right? They all gave you different advice, but they've probably all done a similar thing, which is they've probably sent an email, they've probably wrote the email, they've probably added their playing experience, they've added their highlight tape. So you just take all the things everybody else has done, and once you have done everything that everybody else has done, you can then personalize and do things the way that you want to. You do what's best. Once you've cut the fat, you've taken the bare minimum, you do what's best for you. And yeah, so that's pretty much my personalization mental exercise. Please, 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 please give me feedback on this and let me know if this makes sense. Because I can understand how this might seem a little bit complicated, right? Because it's like, okay, there's this personal preference thing and this bare minimum thing. But if you just think about it, and if you even need to watch this video again or let me know down in the comments, please, if you're like, okay, I get it. People have their personal ways of doing things. There's a million ways to do things. I just have to find ways to do things in ways that best suit me while doing the things that actually matter. That's why this bare minimum thing is important. You can't just do anything whatever way you want to. There's bare minimum requirements to do certain things. But you have to make sure you don't get caught up in doing things the exact way other people do it, because then you're not going to be able to stick with it. You're not going to be able to be consistent. And consistency is a bare minimum requirement for success. So, you know, regardless of what you do, you have to make sure you're able to do it consistently. Because if you can't do it consistently, you will not be able to achieve the goals you want. Right? So pretty much that's why I'm trying to give as many examples and context as I possibly can of how important this personalization thing is. So please give me feedback on this. Let me know if this made sense. You're like, yeah, I'm going to make sure with whatever actions I'm taking, I'm personalizing it. Or when I get advice from other people, I'm personalizing it and getting it down to the bare minimum, knowing what matters, and then making it in a way that best works for me and what I'm trying to achieve for whatever goals that I'm after. Or you could say down in the comments, this was horrible. You could have explained this way better. This sounds way too complicated. You could have simplified this way easier to make me understand it way better. You could have said this. You could have added a picture. Whatever I needed to do, let me know down in the comments. It all helps me become a better YouTuber and give you guys better mental exercises to increase the chances that you become extremely successful. And if you liked it, please, please, please like the video, boost us in algorithm so more guys can see this and make sure that they are personalizing all the advice and information that they are taking in so it better suits them and they can stay consistent and increase the likelihood that they achieve their goals. And with that being said, I guess I'll catch you guys in the next mental gym video. Peace.